you put there, and some of which society put there, and some of which, DNA and culture and all of the things. So it's coming back to that baseline pattern integrity. This is who I am, and living from that place, which can be incredibly vulnerable and terrifying if you've spent all of your life living in the doctrine of some other version.
Hi there, and welcome to Messages from the Body, where Rebel Black is guided by myself, Kelly Vanyai, to channel messages from her body that help us to have shifts and awareness that improve our life. We often talk about topics of a sensitive nature, so if you do happen to find yourself feeling triggered, we've included a list of helpful numbers for you below. But for now, sit back, relax, and we hope you enjoy this episode of Messages from the Body.
Hello.
Welcome back. Lots of good messages today.
Yeah.
There seems to be a thread in every single one of your channelings about it's sort of explained differently each time, but about the details, about not just sort of focusing on what looks obvious. Like today it was the arm and all of the little pieces of it. And I remember you saying in others too about details, like being more aware of not what's obviously trying to get your attention, but what else is there. So that was interesting that came through again today with a little bit more of a different spin on it.
Yeah.
To what we've spoken about in other podcasts.
Yeah, that idea of paying attention to the parts, not just the whole, or not just the part without the context of the whole as well, which is that reductionism that we often do.
And what I thought was really important as well is it's not just paying attention to it, but for what purpose and from what space inside ourselves as well.
Yep. Yeah.
So as a coach, you might be seeing people going through like lots of different feelings about what's coming up and the changes that they might be noticing. And what's some of the advice that you've been giving to people? What are some of the common threads that have been coming through?
Was possibly similar to what's been channeled. Like it's really just working out what's right for us and following that path. And so helping people, move through any blocks that might be in existence to kind of identifying what those needs are, and then pathways for how they may be met. But it feels like there's this deep conditioning that's been very challenged around, I would say, service above self. And it's not that we don't, it's not that service isn't important or that we shouldn't be of service. In fact, that's all of what we can be. But it's identifying what your needs are and how do they get met. Especially in an ever-changing environment. And learning how to be good at getting those, what are the skills you need to master that in any circumstance your needs will be met. And I guess doing a bit of an audit of those needs as well. What's a real need and what's a want disguised as a need. So I think that word discernment came through in the channeling, and that really feels like what, a lot of the teaching that I do is around that. How do you cultivate the ability to discern what is true for you, and what is your own intuition and what is the collective or program.
What kind of things does it take for a person to actually do that? What are some of the things that you have to help your clients with in that respect?
Well, when you're bearing witness to people in such an intimate and vulnerable setting where you're really asking them to kind of bare their soul and be honest and truthful in ways perhaps that they are afraid to be in other relationships or dynamics, it's very obvious to me often what's going on for somebody, but can be completely oblivious to them, to whatever it might be, whether it's an unmet need or a particular struggle they're having in a relationship, or their triggers, why they're triggered by certain things and the behavior that comes from that. So I guess part of my role is firstly to be witness to that, because who in their life has someone just listening to them, listening to them, but also listening beneath what they're saying for the subtle cues and the nuances that I think was talked about in the channeling as well, to then be able to reflect those back to the person in scenarios or stories or examples or questions that helps that person find their way to that information. And sometimes that requires a direct approach if all else fails. And very often it's the subtle pointing out or using story as an example to help someone get there. So, and it's layers. People are, we're very layered beings. So often it's just working layer by layer, and some layers might take, be super thin and come off real easy, and other layers might be super thick and take years. So it's a variable feast of being present to what is being truly said with people, and then helping them find their own pathway to understanding that, so they can then live in a place of awareness and behave then in more alignment with their greater sense of who they are through their awareness.
We've been doing these podcasts for a little while now, and I don't think I've even asked you to share a little bit about your programs and how it is that you offer that to people from wherever they are in the world. You've got ways, if there is someone out there that's listening that was looking for a way to help move through some of these layers and be held in those spaces, can you just share a little bit with us and our audience about what it is that you actually do with your coaching, what the group looks like, and all of that sort of good stuff?
For sure. Really happy to. So, I can work with people in a group setting and in one-to-one. Obviously, that depends on people's time, capacity to pay, ability to want to actually do the work. And I think often that's the very fundamental thing is that that I've learned, having done this work for a number of years now, is that the people's willingness to dig in to the challenging aspects of themselves is really important, because we go deep. I've always gone deep. Like, people at a bar, when in my youth, and having a drink, and everyone's all light, and next minute I'm got some poor person by the collar in some deep and meaningful at the bar, because it's just where I enjoy, that's the connection and communication that I enjoy. So people have to be prepared and willing to be vulnerable firstly, and also have high degrees of desire for things to be different than what they are now, and a willingness to actually do that. So the group program primarily that we run at the moment is called Wild Women, which is spelt WHYLD. And it's we have a fortnightly live session. I drop these channelings, obviously all go in there in the fullest expression of what they are. And I drop in, healings that I do as well, that are, pertinent to what's going on at the time. And I would say that they're a safe space for that, mid-level exploration. So it's really a space for someone who's already kind of on the edges of self-development or personal growth, who may have done a bit of healing work, who, really exploring who they are, and want to go to that next sort of level of depth where they're like, yeah, I'm ready to sort of open up some of those parts of myself that I've been denying, or I've known been there and they've been knocking on my door and I've just been ignoring them, and now's the right time. It's a really safe space, beautiful women, very supportive and caring. And it's just an opportunity to explore consistently. And I think that's one of the things I've learned in my own healing journey is the consistency is key. If you do it every now and then, a bit like exercise, you'll never achieve the mastery of an elite athlete if you're hit and miss on your exercise, or you go to the gym once every fortnight and you might do a run if you feel like it. It's just not. So to me, the Wild Women space provides that consistency. I show up every fortnight. There's opportunity. There's so many resources of self-guided. If you need a healing and you need some support, you can go to the portal and find something that will, help you for half an hour, 40 minutes of just focus, tuning in, some new information, deepened awareness, greater sense of self. And so that's the sort of group container at the moment. We have other ones that come and go, or that have, appeared and disappeared. So there may, depending when people are listening to this, there may be others that are available on either rebelblack.com or bowerbirds.com. And then from a one-to-one point of view, I offer packages of, minimum of 3 energy readings and channelings that I can do with people, which are really guided experience of, again, choosing an area where you're struggling and unpacking it using a modality that I've studied called forensic healing. And that really tunes into what's going on at an energetic level, what's going on from a pattern point of view. We really separate the self from the experience of the pain point to understand it, so that we can then heal it moving forward and be able to be free. And that work has helped people with everything from, chronic migraines and headaches gone to, I had a message this week from a lady who basically was cured of chronic stomach condition that she'd been diagnosed with 6 months earlier. That's gone. It's physical symptoms as well as emotional, improved relationships, financial windfalls, and also improved, financial circumstances. It's really, I would say it's like digging the splinter out of your finger rather than putting a Band-Aid over the top of it and hoping it kind of finds its way out. It's really, I would say, active healing work. And we also I bring quite a lot of this energetic work into consulting in the succession and legacy space. And that's really working with people who are at the phase in their life where they're wanting to bring their life's work through, or there's some bright, shiny object that they've been distracted by but never actually achieved. And or they're at a crossroads, in their career or life, and they've got many doors opening or possibilities open for them, and they don't know which one to choose. And we really, I guess, I help guide people back to their intuition to be able to get to that point. And then we also have an amazing team of people that we pull together in order to implement some of that work if that's required. So there's some really beautiful ways to work, with me, and also with an amazing team of people that I work with as well. It takes a village, as they say.
It does. It takes a village, and it takes that consistency, like you said, and giving people that opportunity to come and join Wild Women if that was the first step for them. Is something I was really hoping you'd speak to, because I know just how beneficial watching the group of women that you're working with and that you're holding and supporting, to see the changes that they make over time. It's one of those things. I was thinking exactly that with the gym. Every time I have a little gap from the gym, like a month, I go back and I'm as soft as I was when I started. And I just feel like I did all that work, and then that bit of a gap just sent me back to where I started from. And so keeping that momentum going is so, so important. And one of the things that I just wanted to reiterate, so that if people are kind of wondering what they can do, doing the work with somebody, being held by somebody like Rebel, and having that constant group that you can keep coming back to and always leveling up, is something that really starts to clear away that doubt, if you have any, or so the fears just sort of start to wash away over time, and a more confident, more whole version of you starts to step forward, so that that's who you know yourself as, even though that's who you've always been. You really get to experience that. And I see that in the women that you work with. There's more confidence in their smile, and there's a glint in their eyes where they just feel more present and whole in themselves.
Yeah. And well, I think, Kel, it is the consistency. And if I look back even, say, to the Rural Woman, which of course is a beautiful member-owned cooperative, and which I'm the chair of, and I do a values activation lab session every single month, which is really focused on that very, self-development, where a lot of the other work is very much professional development, specifically for rural women. And if I look at that consistent container that's been around since 2014, and I look at the women that have progressed through that, and then some that are, they rejoin at different phases when they're looking for something new, or where they just need, they've reached another crossroad or another turning point, and they feel like they can come home back to that space, even though they've been out of it for perhaps a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years even. And they feel that they can come back there and be met where they are, is something that I'm deeply committed to as a practitioner, as a service provider, as a human being, is to do the work myself first and foremost. I am not asking anyone in any of the work I do to do something I haven't done myself, or that I'm not deeply committed to myself, as, erring as human as I am. But also that it's that consistency is like, we will be here. And I think when we co-founded the Rural Woman Co-op, and when I started it as a business before it was a co-op, it was a commitment that we would show up week in, week out, no exception, whether there was 0 people or 1,000 people or 100,000 people, we would show up. And we've done that consistently since then. And something I'm really proud of. And I think that level of commitment is what is lacking in a lot of particularly rural people's experience of service provision, because providers come and go, the government funding ends, whatever the excuses and reasons are, all of which have great validity in their context, but none of which helps people move through a healing journey, which is a lifetime. Like I said, we're layered. We're delusional if we think we're ever going to reach the top of the mountain. There's just more mountains to climb. And so that being able to show up and know that you can come back to a safe space, that you'll be held, you'll be supported, there'll be no judgment, and you'll be met where you are, I think is incredibly potent and powerful, and such a great gift.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The level of trust and openness that people can actually achieve when they know you're not going to just run away when things get to a space where they really need you. You can give them so much more confidence to even go deeper with you.
Or when they don't. It's like this, when, okay, we're not working together anymore for one reason or another, there's still a baseline. It's like the musical scale, there's a baseline that no matter what, you can come back to, base. And then over the top of that comes the melody and the nuance and the layers and there's another program or some other way. But there's this sort of consistent base. It's like, that's familiar and safe, and the values of never changed, and the way that people show up has never changed. And the integrity that sits in that, to me, is absolutely crucial and key.
Wow. Yeah, I actually just I realized what you were channeling is a calling for people to come to that space for themselves, to find out what that is.
Yes,
almost. Yeah,
totally. That is the exact call, is to come into your pattern integrity, which is you free of the layers you put there, and some of which society put there, and some of which, DNA and culture and all of the things. So it's coming back to that baseline pattern integrity. This is who I am, and living from that place, which can be incredibly vulnerable and terrifying if you've spent all of your life living in the doctrine of some other version.
I'm sure most of the people that are listening to this are already on the wavelength of
For sure.
looking for those avenues to come into that space. But one thing that really just hit me as well is that when you are in that space of where you're coming from your own values and the integrity of those, there is no trying to stay the path. It's just who you are. And that was something else that you channeled about, whether we know whether we're tapping into something that is coming from source, or a movement forward, like a direction forward that is something we should do, versus something where there's a lot of people saying it, but maybe it's not our true path. When you're really in that space for yourself too, just sharing sort of what it's like for you to be in that space for others, you're not really thinking about whether something's right or wrong. It's like a knowing for you, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's undeniable. It's undeniable. And it's like, I mean, you know it when you know it. It's one of those annoying things. I know I've heard people saying like, oh, that's so annoying because it doesn't give me the recipe and the formula, and I want the 3 steps. There isn't that. It's like when you know it, it drops in and you're like, boom, that's it. That's me in integrity, and everything else falls away. And what people fear in doing that is the boundary setting process, because it requires them to enter into a new relationship very often with people close to them that they're afraid of upsetting because they've been in the other way for so long. It's going to be discombobulating. They're aware of that because we don't like to upset other people, and rightfully so. That's not a bad thing to live like. But what I've experienced is when you are in that integrity and you communicate from that place, people get it. That's it, that people get it. And they're like, okay, that's how it is now. And they're either in your life or they're not, or, they honor the boundary or they move on. I think a lot of the conflict that we fear never actually is realized when you're in alignment, and that's where you're communicating from. The conflict only comes when you lack the clarity or integrity in your own person, in your own being.
Such a powerful point to finish, I think, so that we can leave people with that, because that is so true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebel. That was another amazing session, and looking forward to our next one, where actually I might ask you a bit more about forensic healing, because that sounds super interesting and the audience is probably curious to know a little bit more about it. So we'll see you on the next episode, hey?
Thanks, Cal.
Thanks so much, Rebel. The conversation you've just heard is the follow-up to Rebel's channeling. After I've brought her out of trance, we then discussed the topics that she channeled. The channeling itself is exclusively available to her members of Wild Women. If you loved today's episode and you wanted to get yourself some more of Rebel and her amazing content, go to the links in the description below, either to her blog or find out about joining Wild Women. That is Wild spelt WHYLD, because we're here to find our why in life, and this work is so juicy and important when it comes to that. So I really encourage you to check her out and join Wild Women if you have loved today and want to do more of this self-exploration in a beautiful, safe space with Rebel Black.